What's going on behind my back?
Nothing. Look. No hands.
We'll grow in number, fueled by them to see the horizon, turn us to thousands.
He's the most physically beautiful man to ever stand in front of a movie camera.
I mean, he's such a specimen of maleness.
He can look at you in a way and the camera just stops.
What's your name and unit?
He grew up in a world shadowed by poverty and the turbulence of war.
It's right here.
But out of the back tenements of Edinburgh, Scotland, was to emerge one of the world's most recognizable talents. Today, at the height of his career, Sean Connery is the veteran of nearly 70 films and countless stage and television dramas. Yet throughout his professional life, Connery would be typecast, sued, harassed, and revered, but it always came down to the truth of his acting.
It's like when the guy phones up and says you've been voted the sexiest man alive. Well, I mean, what are you supposed to reply to that, eh?
He has sparkle, yes, he has. Like a child, he has an enthusiasm. It's really wonderful. I don't think he could make the film he makes if he didn't have the enthusiasm.
Now, in an exclusive visit with Sean Connery, family and friends, a rare portrait of the artist. Born in Edinburgh, Scotland in August 1930, the son of poor working-class parents, Sean Connery grew up at the height of the Depression. He was still a young boy when the family's dire financial straits forced him to get a job.
When I was 9, I started to work, and I used to walk to work in the dark. My mother went to work at the same time, and then I used to go straight from there at 6 in the morning and go straight to school. In 1940, we were moved out of the schools into private houses, which was wonderful. I never went back to school. I just left. And it's only later how much I kind of regretted, how much I had dodged a bullet in school. But I got a horse and cart, and I delivered the milk and coal, potatoes, and all that kind of stuff.
The Edinburgh Film Festival has its headquarters in this building. They're opposite the Usher Hall in Edinburgh, and they got Sean to open it, and someone said, "Have you ever been in this building before?" And he said, "Well, I used to deliver the milk here." He was the milkman, you know, with the horse and the... And that's the... But he said it seriously, it wasn't a joke. And that's a side of him that I absolutely love. He doesn't differentiate between the milkman and the star.
I never had that sense of being genuinely poor. It was only later, when I sort of got away and went to the Navy at 16, that I was really conscious of how different everything was in other places, how much better it could be.
Connery spent 3 miserable years in the Navy before being discharged on medical grounds. He developed ulcers. He was back on the street with no job qualifications.
I was quite skinny, although wiry, and I started doing bodybuilding. And I went down to London for the Mr. Universe contest, representing Scotland in the tall man's class.
He always says his calves are his weak point. And I've studied them, and my calves are really Jesse ones, but his are beauties. So the other guys must have had calves like stallions.
After placing second in the Mr. Universe contest, Connery was offered a spot on a professional soccer team, but chose instead to pursue acting. Now in his early 20s, his first real acting job was as a member of the male chorus in South Pacific.
They asked me to do some handsprings and handstands and things, and one had to look like an American, which I suppose I could pass for.
The critics were unanimous in their praise of Sean Connery. So was 20th Century Fox, which offered him a long-term contract. Connery made several films during the late 1950s, but few advanced his career. Then, in 1958, Lana Turner chose him as her co-star in the high-profile feature Another Time, Another Place. As Connery's career heated up, he embarked on his first trip to Hollywood. Disney Studios had cast him in the fanciful love story Darby O'Gill and the Little People.
American, he looked like a star, you know, with hair and muscles and his shirt rolled tight over his muscles. And we all in Scotland saw ourselves as little scrawny Glaswegians, you know, or little Edinburgh guys. Suddenly there's this big guy.
When he first started out, his agent or somebody suggested that he get rid of his accent. And, you know, so he would have a wider range. And he said, forget about it. You know, he says, I don't care. He says, this is the way I talk. This is me.
Why am my hand shaking?
While pursuing Hollywood, Connery also worked in the theatre. Connery's performance in Anna Karenina would propel him into one of the greatest opportunities of his life. The producers of the celebrated spy thrillers by novelist Ian Fleming gave him an audition for the coveted role of James Bond.
The producers had to be saying to themselves, we're never going to find a guy who is as physically fit and sexually powerful and intelligent and tough enough and clever enough and sophisticated enough to bring the character to the screen.
Cubby and I went through, I would say, 200 actors. I like the way he moved.
Sylvia Trench. I admire your luck, Mr.
Bond. James Bond.
Between bouts as James Bond, Connery managed to explore new roles in several very different films. He was growing as an actor and expanding the range of his portrayals. Connery never lost sight of his working-class roots. At the height of Bond's stardom, he chose to write and direct a documentary on social issues in Scotland by focusing on labour conditions at a troubled shipyard.
I had seen him, I was a welder in a shipyard and he was making a documentary and we used to gaze at him, my God, look who's here. This Scottish icon would come and go, but I never had the temerity to say hello or anything.
Connery's commitment to help his native Scotland didn't stop with the documentary, but has been a lifelong passion, and his concern for improving the lives of the Scottish people is very personal. In 1971, Connery agreed to reprise the role of James Bond in Diamonds Are Forever in order to donate his entire $1.2 million fee to his newly established Scottish International Education Trust. For over 20 years, the Trust has been supporting education, the arts, and young athletes with grants totaling over £80,000 each year. Sean and Micheline Roquebrune first met at a golf tournament in Micheline's native Morocco. They soon fell in love, and in 1975 they married and began raising a family together. The passion of their relationship seemed to express itself in Sean's professional life, for he was now to embark on some of the greatest roles of his acting career.
One of my favorite scenes, the ending of The Man Who Would Be King, when he's going across the bridge and the bridge collapses and he falls to his death.
It's all yours.
I think that's probably my favorite Sean Connery film.
Back to back with The Man Who Would Be King, Connery played one of the most whimsical leads of his career as Robin, opposite Audrey Hepburn's Marion. Sean has one son, Jason, by his previous marriage, and Micheline two sons, Stéphane and Olivier, and a daughter, Marisha.
Pound for pound,
Yes.
this one hits the ball the furthest.
Yeah, pound for pound.
Yes, pound for pound, yes. And I'll put this on television, I'll bet anybody that they can't outdrive her.
Pound for
In the 1996 blockbuster The Rock, Sean assumed the character of the only man to have ever escaped from Alcatraz. Sean has received many unusual tributes. He was given an honorary doctorate at St. Andrews University, as well as being awarded two of the most prestigious titles France can bestow, the Commander of Arts and Letters and the Legion of Honor. Perhaps the award that had the most meaning for Sean came from his native Scotland. The man who had once delivered milk on the streets of Edinburgh now came home to receive one of the greatest tributes Scotland confers on anyone, the freedom of the city.
It's a big, big deal, especially in Edinburgh. And they did it for Sean, who is the most famous living Scottish person.
You there!
And the winner is...
Sean Connery in the Untouchables.
I must say, I wasn't convinced that I would get the Oscar. It didn't seem that important to me. And I have to admit that when I did receive it, it did seem very important. I was caught with it.
I thank you all sincerely.
At the point of Untouchables, he really became untouchable. Everybody realized what a fantastic film actor he was.
The street was very, very moving. It's really an amazing honor. It's 500 years, and the people who have received it, guys like Garibaldi, Benjamin Franklin, Churchill. What really added to it was that it was the people in Edinburgh and then in turn in Scotland who voted on it.
When I was first informed about the possibility of receiving the freedom of Edinburgh, well, I was flattered and thrilled. I knew then I would not be able to express my full thanks adequately in words. I can tell you how I feel. I feel like I've gone 15 rounds with Mike Tyson, but I won. Edinburgh, I thank you.